I'm so happy you could join me. If there is one topic that has created a bunch of confusion in the world of dog training, is that of dominance. So today I want to talk to you about that, its implications, and what other models can we work with. Part of the confusion with this topic is that there are many definitions about what scientists, biologists, animal behaviorists call dominance or social dominance. So let's look at some of these definitions. Many interpret dominance as the breeding pair. It could be, of course, this comes from wolf behavior. So the wolves that are actually mating or that have the most possibility of mating are called the dominant pair. Also, is considered more of a division of labor or role theory, and this is not the alpha role that is talked about in the alpha dominance paradigm. So it's actually having the animals having different roles within their family system or their pack. There's also the dominance of parents over pups, and I think this is self-explanatory. And also dominance not as a trait that an individual possesses, but more of a fluid state that is related also to the resources that are available. And I think this last one is very poignant for understanding dog behavior and understanding how to live harmoniously with our pets, frankly, with our dogs. I would argue also that part of the reason that it's been very confusing to tease out the idea of dominance and hierarchies and how that relates to our dogs is that on the one hand, the discussion is that there is no hierarchy or dominance behaviors in wolves or dogs. And frankly, any social complex group of animals is going to have some sort of structure. Now, it is much more complicated than to say, well, this is the alpha, this is the beta. There's actually many different ways that scientists have discovered that animals can have a social stratification arrangement. Another important consideration about the social dominance is that it's in place to avoid conflict between the members of that group versus create adversarial relationships or the presentation of aggression. Aggression is something that animals rather not get involved with because it's expensive. If you are confronted by another animal and you get injured, you're dead. So these social stratifications can have a very salient purpose, which is not one of creating conflict, but the opposite, of bringing some sort of baseline and just stability within a group. Dogs are virtually indistinguishably genetically from wolves. Of course, there is domestication, which brought many changes that makes now our dogs different from wolves. But remember, genetically speaking, there is not a lot of differentiation. Domestication, of course, played an important role in making our dogs who they are today. One example of this differentiation of wolves and dogs is what is called neoteny. And this is an important trait for us to consider because it means that our dogs have retrained infantile characteristics that are not present in adult wolves. So our adult dogs, of course, puppies have this, continue to present these characteristics that are typical of young animals, not an adult animal. And thank God for that. So what is it about dominance theory in the public discourse? It is referred as the alpha or the leader of the pack. In other words, the idea is that the owner is the leader of the pack. By pack, they mean the dogs that live in that household, or the alpha person, I guess, or alpha status. Now, one thing to consider that the typical definition of pack is animals that hunt together. To begin with, we are not hunting with our dogs, and most of our dogs are actually not even hunting anymore. So that definition, again, has been kind of massaged or misinterpreted when we talked about dominance theory in the public discourse. The implications of this dominance theory, or leader of the pack, is that dogs must be dominated. They need to be submissive to us. Of course, they need to be obedient. And the idea is generated from wolf behavior and their social structure. And again, I'm not saying that this is the social structure of wolves. I'm just saying that the idea behind the leader of the pack comes from wolf behavior and social structure of wolves. Also, if dogs are not submissive to the pet parent, it might be that the dog becomes disobedient, dangerous, aggressive, and unruly. So this is, in essence, a model that we had acquired in order to live with our dogs. This is how we create a relationship with them. Now, dogs naturally do not want to exert power over us, but this is one of the tenets of the pack mentality or theory, that dogs actually are looking for those opportunities where they can become the alpha. And most of the mechanisms that are used with the dominance model is the use of aversives, which is described as a presentation of a stimulus that is fear-inducing or unpleasant for the receiver. And of course, the coercion. It is not as if the dog is voluntarily engaging with us in this role-playing of the dominance, but it's more the person trying versus with different mechanisms, which I would consider to be aversive and coercive in nature, to make this dog comply. Now, the alpha and dominance theory, in my view and the view of many others, is that it's really bad news for the dog. So it is really not based in the ethology of dogs, in their social structure. And just note that I am not saying that dogs don't have a social stratification structure. Of course they do. But it's not the idea, the simplistic idea of a dominant dog that is trying to take over our world, and we need to in turn be the alpha. And it's also bad news for the dog because in most cases, dogs are, again, forced to submission or to obedience, but they're not learning anything. They're just learning perhaps to even fear us, or that we are bad news for them because we present things that they don't want. So that's definitely bad news for the dog. We leave the dog in a vacuum. Instead of telling the dog or teaching the dog better, hey, this is a better option, this is a better behavior to engage with than the current behavior, we leave this poor dog in a vacuum, not knowing how to perform, how to behave. And in many instances, what we see as a result is dogs that are barely behaving. And many people consider this a well-behaved dog. Well, from a behavior perspective, don't only do I think this is really sad for the dog, but it's not that the dog is behaving or being a good dog. It's just that the dog starts, quote unquote, shutting down because it is afraid of repercussions that he doesn't even understand. Also, it's really bad news for the owners, and it could be dangerous. So let's take, for example, the alpha role. First of all, rolling a dog on its back, any canine, would be considered a threat unless that particular dog really trusts the person. It has been done in a playful way, but basically, it is not something that any animal wants to go through. Being in a position where they can't escape, where they're feeling being threatened. The intention of the person might not be that, but we need to look at it from the perspective of the dog. So here's a dog that is feeling threatened because it's being pinned down to the ground with no opportunity to escape. And now the person has their face really close to that dog's face. Frankly, it is a situation that I don't want to be in at all. And also, I think most people really do not want to have an adversarial relationship with their dogs. They want to have a relationship that is easy, harmonious, fun. And being told that you need to be dominant over your dog puts a lot of people in this conflict because they don't know any better. They think this is what needs to happen. This is what we need to do in order to have a household where we can control the dog and control the behavior of the dog. Why is it then that this alpha dominance theory is so prevalent? Well, it all started with the observation and interpretation of the behavior of wolves in captivity during the 1980s and 1990s. And there has been many exponents of biologists and animal behaviorists that were doing this research. And below you will find some resources that I think will really clarify a lot of what they were investigating and putting forth. And if you continue reading with the material, you see that a lot of this information has been debunked or modified. Notice here that I'm saying that the research was being done with wolves in captivity. So it's an artificial environment. And again, somebody said, which I think is a very good analogy, that studying wolves in captivity is similar to studying human behavior in a concentration camp or a refugee camp. It is obvious that what we're going to find there is people, in the case of the concentration camp or refugee camp, that are really at their dire straits, in the worst situation possible. How is it then that we can imply that what we could observe is normal human behavior? Humans, we love stratification. Our systems are based in stratification, the same reason but that the other animals with a developed social structure have social stratification or status, or however we want to name that. So it makes sense for us that when we think about other species, especially one that is so close to us as is our dogs, that we kind of project onto them this idea that they must also have this social stratification. Because we have it, we understand it. So are there different models or choices that we can look into that will help us and have a different, and I would argue better, relationship with our dogs? So if we choose to move away from the alpha leader of the pack model, what other frameworks can we use? How then can we relate to our pet dogs? How can we teach them? And this particular subject will be what I'm going to be addressing in November's Hound Lane. So I hope you can join me. I'm going to be delving into practical advice and considerations that can serve as a different model for us to relate to our pet dogs that will make for a more harmonious household. Thanks. See you then.